Krishna. It is a great honor and privilege and pleasure to be with all of you today. And I look forward to being with you for many more days to come, especially in the presence of these beautiful deities and in the most sacred dham of Sri Vrindavan. In the Caitanya Charitamrita, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says that the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya are like a lake, and within that lake are many beautiful lotus flowers, which are the pastimes of Krishna, Radha and Krishna. As His Holiness Radhanath-Swami told us, and as our acharyas told us, the Caitanya Charitamrita is perhaps the most important of all the books of the followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And exactly on this date, 37 years ago, Srila Prabhupada completed his translation of the Caitanya Charitamrita. And I thought to begin by describing what happened on the morning of this date, 37 years ago. Srila Prabhupada was in Juhu, on the top floor of one of the tenement buildings, and every morning, just before 6 o'clock, we would walk up the stairs to Srila Prabhupada's room to accompany him on his morning walk on Juhu Beach. And we would do the same thing every morning when Prabhupada was in Juhu. But when we went on the Devadasi, after the Rama Ekadasi, we were surprised to find that the doors were locked. On one side was Srila Prabhupada's quarters, and on the other side were the quarters of his staff. And both doors were locked. I wasn't sure what to do, but I sort of gently knocked on both doors, and Srila Prabhupada's secretary at the time, Harikesh Prabhu, opened the door just a little bit, and he said that that night Srila Prabhupada had completed his translation of Sri Caitanya Charitamrita, that Srila Prabhupada had written the most beautiful glorification of his Guru Maharaj at the end, that Srila Prabhupada was in a very ecstatic mood, and that Srila Prabhupada said we should celebrate by having a feast. So now I shall read to you Srila Prabhupada's beautiful glorification of his Guru Maharaj that he composed after completing his translation of Sri Caitanya Charitamrita. Concluding words. Today, Sunday, November 10th, November 10th, 1974, corresponding to the 10th of Kartik, Chaitanya era 488, the 11th day of the dark fortnight, the Rama Ekadasi, we have now finished the English translation of Sri Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami's Sri Caitanya Charitamrita in accordance with the authorized order of His Divine Grace Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj, my beloved eternal spiritual master, guide, and friend. Although according to material vision, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, passed away from this material world on the last day of December, 1936, I still consider His Divine Grace to be always present with me by His Vani, His words. There are two ways of association, by Vani and by Vapu. Vani means words, and Vapu means physical presence. Physical presence is sometimes appreciable and sometimes not, but Vani continues to exist eternally. Therefore, we must take advantage of the Vani, not the physical presence. The Bhagavad Gita, for example, is the Vani of Lord Krishna. Although Krishna was personally present 5,000 years ago and is no longer physically present from the materialistic point of view, the Bhagavad Gita continues. In the very first sentence, Srila Prabhupada explains that he took up the translation of Sri Caitanya Charitamrita under the authorized order of His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And the theme of the concluding words is the service of the order of the spiritual master. Srila Prabhupada himself describes how he read in a commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's statement that the disciple should take up the order of the spiritual master as his life and soul. And Srila Prabhupada did that with the orders he received from his spiritual master. And he showed the example for all of us, how we can associate with the spiritual master eternally through the service of the instructions of the spiritual master. And this is a very important point, because as Srila Prabhupada says, physical presence is sometimes appreciable and sometimes not. But the Vani exists eternally. In this connection, we may call to memory the time when I was fortunate enough to meet His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, sometime in the year 1922. Srila Prabhupada had come to Calcutta from Sridham, Mayapur, to start the missionary activities of the Gaudiya Mutt. He was sitting in a house at Ultadanga when, through the inducement of an intimate friend, the late Sriman Narendranath Malik, I had the opportunity to meet His Divine Grace for the first time. I do not remember the actual date of the meeting, but at that time I was one of the managers of Dr. Bose's laboratory in Calcutta. I was a newly married young man, addicted to Gandhi's movement, and dressed in khadi. Fortunately, even at our first meeting, His Divine Grace advised me to preach the cult of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu in English in the Western countries. Because at that time I was a complete nationalist, a follower of Mahatma Gandhi's, I submitted to His Divine Grace that unless our country were freed from foreign subjugation, no one would hear the message of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu seriously. Of course, we had some argument on this subject, but at last I was defeated and convinced that Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu's message is the only panacea for suffering humanity. I was also convinced that the message of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu was then in the hands of a very expert devotee, and that surely the message of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu would spread all over the world. I could not, however, immediately take up his instructions to preach, but I took his words very seriously and was always thinking of how to execute his order, although I was quite unfit to do so. Srila Prabhupada explains that in his youth, he was the leader of his friends. And so when Narendranath Malik met Srila Saraswati Thakur, he wanted Abai to meet him and give his verdict. But Srila Prabhupada had not been very impressed with sadhus that he had seen. He said that many sadhus would visit his home, would visit his father's home, but he was not very impressed with them. And when Narendranath Malik mentioned that he wanted Abai to meet a sadhu, Abai thought he may be like the other sadhus. And he did not really want to meet him. There was a building near where Abai lived. And in the building, a lot of men would go out in the morning. A lot of single men, I guess, were living there. They would go out in the morning, earn some money, come back in the evening, cook some food and eat and go to sleep, and then go out the next morning. So among them was a man who was, in the morning, he would put on his saffron dress as a sadhu, go out, collect alms, Lakshmi, then come back, change out of his saffron clothes, and join the others for their evening meal and repeat the same process. So Srila Prabhupada was skeptical. And later Srila Prabhupada said that in Kali Yuga, intelligent people will be skeptical because there are so many cheaters. So Prabhupada was skeptical and he resisted going. But in the end, Narendranath Malik prevailed, and Abai agreed to go with him. In 2007, 4 years ago, His Holiness Radhanath-Swami and I met in Calcutta to visit different holy places connected with Srila Prabhupada's early pastimes. And so we went to the address where Prabhupada's family lived. We went to the Radha Govinda temple, where Srila Prabhupada would gaze upon the deities. We went to the jackfruit tree, where Srila Prabhupada took birth. We went to the temple nearby, a beautiful Radha Krishna temple, where we understand that Abai's mother would go, and I'm sure she prayed for Abai's safe delivery and welfare. And yes, we went to the grammar school where Abai studied. We went to many places. And we also wanted to go to Ultadanga, where Srila Prabhupada met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, but we ran out of time. But after I accompanied Maharaj to the airport, I went on his behalf. And it's a very special place, very historical place, very sacred place, which has now come into the hands of ISKCON. very fortunately so. A very, very important place for many reasons. So, Srila Prabhupada went, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was sitting up, and all the others were sitting down. But there was another place to sit up, and Srila Prabhupada sat up also. And as mentioned here, Srila Saraswati Thakur instructed him to preach the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the English language to the Western world. And Srila Prabhupada argued that even uncivilized nations like Japan, no offense, have political independence, and India does not yet have political independence. So first, India should gain independence, then people will hear the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu seriously. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur replied that political independence and dependence are relative conditions of the material world. The material world is always filled with dualities. But the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is eternal. It is beyond the dualities of the material world. And people need to hear the message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that the message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the only solution to all the world's problems. And it cannot wait. We must preach this message now, immediately, under any circumstance. And Srila Prabhupada later remarked that in his whole life, until then, he had never been defeated in any argument. But he was defeated by his Guru Maharaj. And he was glad that he was defeated by him. So, Srila Prabhupada mentions here that he received the instruction, he took it to heart, but the circumstances were such that he could not immediately execute it. But he was always thinking of the instruction and how to execute it. So this is another lesson for us, that we may receive an instruction from the spiritual master, and due to circumstances, we may not be able to execute it immediately. But we should always keep it in our heart and think how to execute it. Wait for the opportune moment when we will be able to take it up, and pray for that opportunity. I had an experience with Srila Prabhupada that gave me the same message, you could say. We were with Srila Prabhupada in Gorakhpur, as guests of Sri Hanuman Prasadji Podar of the Gita Press. And in fact, we were staying in what had been Sri Podarji's personal residence, estate, Sri Krishna Niketan. And Srila Prabhupada received a new issue of Back to Godhead magazine, and the issue happened to have an article written by me. So Srila Prabhupada called for me, and he said, I have read your article. It is very nice, and you should write. You should take up writing as your main business. And he said, you can travel with me, and I will personally instruct you how to write. So, those days, we didn't have computers. In fact, in those days, very few people had typewriters in India. If we needed something typed, we'd usually go to the courthouse and find some people with typewriters in front of the courthouse and pay them to type whatever we needed typed. So I went out and I bought some lined paper and some pens and pencils to begin my writing. A few days later, my senior godbrother, Hansaduta Prabhu, told Srila Prabhupada that he wanted to begin his world traveling Sankirtan party. And he wanted me to be on his party. And Srila Prabhupada agreed. So at first I was a little disappointed because I was looking forward to traveling with Srila Prabhupada and being instructed by him in writing. But I had faith that whatever Srila Prabhupada said and did was for the ultimate good of all concerned. So I thought if Srila Prabhupada wants me to go with Hansaduta, or if he wants to fulfill Hansaduta's request that I go with him, then that must be the best. So we went to Agra and Aligarh, and then we got a telegram. Hansaduta got a telegram from Srila Prabhupada saying, organizing big Pandal program, Bombay, come with party immediately. So we packed up, went to Bombay, and in Bombay, Shamsundar Prabhu, Srila Prabhupada's very senior disciple, Shamsundar Prabhu was the temple president. And he was in charge of the Pandal program. So he held a meeting with all the devotees to divide up the services, and he wanted me to collect. He wanted me to raise funds for the Pandal program. I said, Shamsundar Prabhu, Srila Prabhupada instructed me to write. He said that I should take up writing as my main business. Shamsundar Prabhu replied, you can write anytime. This is the one opportunity we have. We can go into any big man's office in Bombay and asked for an advertisement for our souvenir. So you should do this now. And then after the Pandal, you can write. I thought about what Shamsundar Prabhu said, and it made sense to me. And I also thought upon Srila Prabhupada's instruction that we should cooperate with our authorities. So I agreed. After some time, Srila Prabhupada came to Bombay. Of course, it was a great occasion of jubilation. And as would usually happen when Srila Prabhupada arrived, he would go into his room, sit in his room, and all the devotees would crowd into the room, and Srila Prabhupada would look around the room, glance affectionately at all the devotees, exchange some words with them. And it was a very blissful family feeling. So Srila Prabhupada was glancing at the devotees, speaking a few words to them, and then he came to me and he said, "So Giriraj, how is your writing going?" And I was so flustered, I didn't know what to say. I just couldn't say anything. Then he said, "Okay, we'll speak later." So shortly thereafter, with just me and him in the room, he asked. And I explained what Shamsundar Prabhu had said and how I thought what he said actually made sense, and how Prabhupada wanted us to cooperate with our authorities. So I agreed. But in the meeting with Srila Prabhupada, I was very apprehensive because I wasn't sure if I had actually done the right thing or not. And so after making my presentation, I asked Srila Prabhupada, did I do the right thing? And Srila Prabhupada replied, "You can suspend the order of the spiritual master, but you can never neglect it." And then he gave his own example. He said, "My Guru Maharaj also ordered me to write, but I've been so busy traveling all over India and having programs, I also haven't had much time to write." So you can suspend the order of the spiritual master, but you can never neglect it. And I was very elated, you could say. I was elated with Srila Prabhupada's answer because it was so practical. It didn't compromise the principle, but it accommodated the fact that circumstances may be such that one is not able to take up a particular instruction at a particular time. So we'll continue. So again, I could not, however, immediately take up his instructions to preach, but I took his words very seriously and was always thinking of how to execute his order, although I was quite unfit to do so. In this way, I passed my life as a householder until 1950, when I retired from family life as a vanaprastha. With no companion, I loitered here and there until 1958, when I took sannyas. Then I was completely ready to discharge the order of my spiritual master. Previously, in 1936, just before His Divine Grace passed away at Jagannath Puri, I wrote him a letter asking what I could do to serve him. In reply, he wrote me a letter dated 13th December 1936, ordering me in the same way to preach in English the cult of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as I had heard it from him. And Srila Prabhupada related that when he would wake up, he would be in anxiety. That, oh, Guru Maharaj is calling me. He wants me to leave home and follow him and preach. And he was thinking, how can I do this? How can I do this? And then he related that one of his god brothers, Sri Srimad Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj, told him that unless you take sannyas, you cannot properly fulfill the order of Guru Maharaj to preach. When Srila Keshav Maharaj left this world in 1968, Srila Prabhupada got the news in Seattle, and he gave a beautiful talk in appreciation of his god brother. And in his talk, he explained how his god brother forced him to take sannyas. And he paraphrased a verse. It was actually a verse written by Srila Raghunath Das Goswami in appreciation of Srila Sanatan Goswami, that he was unwilling to drink the nectar of Vairagya Vidya, but he forced me to. So Srila Prabhupada said that his god brother, Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj, had forced him to take sannyas, although he was unwilling. And then he said, not that my god brother forced me, but practically my Guru Maharaj forced me through my god brother. So this is another instruction for us that we should recognize when our spiritual master is speaking to us through our god brothers, or not necessarily even our god brothers. He can speak to us in many ways, through many mouths. And if we are humble and in the mood to get instruction from our spiritual master, even in his physical absence, we may find that our Guru Maharaj is speaking to us, that he is speaking to us through those who are dear to him. And Srila Prabhupada was like that. He often took suggestions from friends, very seriously, as if his Guru Maharaj is sending this instruction to him.